Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is May 14th. On this day in 2022, a horrific act of racially motivated violence shattered the sense of peace in Buffalo, New York, when a young white supremacist opened fire at a Tops Friendly Market store, killing 10 black shoppers and injuring 3 others. The gunman live-streamed the attack, targeting a tight-knit black community on the city's east side. Today, we'll unpack the events of that devastating day and talk about who the shooter was and the long road toward justice and healing. Let's get started. Buffalo's East Side has long been shaped by systemic inequities. It's a community that's rich in culture, but is often left behind in terms of investment and infrastructure. For decades, the area was known as a food desert with little access to full-service grocery stores. It wasn't until 2003, after years of grassroots activism, that the neighborhood celebrated a major milestone: the opening of a Tops Friendly Market store on Jefferson Avenue. The 29,000 square foot store quickly became more than just a place to buy groceries. It was a community hub. It was a place where neighbors caught up, shared stories, and found a sense of pride in something that they had fought hard to secure. Serving about 22,000 people, the store filled a massive gap in the access to healthy, affordable food. But the Jefferson Avenue store also sat in the heart of a neighborhood that was physically and economically isolated from the rest of Buffalo. Infrastructure decisions like the construction of Route 33 in the 20th century split the community in two, cutting off residents from broader opportunities and deepening both social and economic divides. Then, in 2022, the store, which was hard-won and deeply valued, became the site of unimaginable loss. Peyton Gendron, an 18-year-old from Conklin, New York, grew up in a quiet little town about 200 miles from Buffalo. But his online life told a dark story. In high school, Gendron was already raising red flags. In 2021, he made a disturbing comment about carrying out a murder-suicide, which prompted a brief psychiatric evaluation. He was released after less than 2 days, and no further steps were taken to restrict his access to firearms. In the months that followed, he spiraled further into hate after being radicalized on platforms like 4chan and Discord. He embraced the Great Replacement conspiracy theory, which claims that white people are being systematically replaced by non-white populations. This is, of course, a false, racist narrative that has inspired other acts of mass violence. Gendron documented his beliefs in a 180-page manifesto where he described himself as a white supremacist, fascist, and an anti-Semite. He cited previous mass shooters as role models, and he meticulously planned his attack, choosing Buffalo specifically because of its high percentage of black residents. He visited the Jefferson Avenue top store multiple times and even drew maps of the interior. On May 14th, he arrived heavily armed and wearing body armor with a camera mounted to his helmet to live stream his actions. His weapon was covered in racist slurs. Just after 2:30 p.m. on May 14th, a quiet Saturday afternoon, Gendron pulled into the Tops parking lot. In 6 terrifying minutes, he forever changed a community. He began his assault outside, shooting 4 people in the parking lot. 3 died instantly. Inside, he was met by retired Buffalo police officer Aaron Salter Jr., who was working as a security guard. Salter heroically returned fire, but Gendron's body armor deflected the shots. Gendron killed him and moved through the store, targeting customers and employees. Among the victims were Ruth Whitfield, 86, who had just visited her husband in a nursing home; Catherine Massey, 72, a civil rights advocate and former journalist. Celestine Cheney, 65, who was shopping with her sister. Roberta Drury, 32, who had moved to Buffalo to care for her brother. Gendron reportedly spared a white employee and apologized before moving on. At 2:36 p.m., officers arrived and found Gendron at the front of the store. He briefly threatened to take his own life before eventually surrendering. The violence had lasted less than 10 minutes. Law enforcement acted swiftly. The Buffalo Police Department and Erie County Sheriff's Office were on scene within minutes. The FBI quickly joined, classifying the attack as a hate crime and domestic terrorism. And what they found afterwards was chilling. Gendron had left his manifesto, live-streamed the shooting on Twitch, and posted detailed plans on Discord. 30 minutes before his attack, he shared links to his private writings, inviting others to watch. Investigators also learned that he'd conducted reconnaissance trips to Buffalo months earlier, even interacting with store employees during one visit. And while he had been flagged in 2021 for making violent threats, nothing had prevented him from legally buying the weapon that he used. One particularly painful revelation came from a Tops assistant manager who had called 911 during the attack. She whispered to avoid detection by the shooter, but said the dispatcher became irritated and hung up. The dispatcher was later terminated. Gendron was indicted on both state and federal charges, including 10 counts of first-degree murder, domestic terrorism motivated by hate, and multiple hate crimes charges. In February 2023, he pleaded guilty in New York State Court and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. During his sentencing hearing, the family members of the victims addressed him directly, sharing their heartbreak and rage. Federal prosecutors, meanwhile, have pursued their own case. In January 2024, they announced that due to the calculated nature of the attack and its targeting of victims based solely on race, they would seek the death penalty. Ongoing civil litigation has also begun. In July 2023, families of the victims filed a lawsuit against several social media companies, arms manufacturers, and even Gendron's parents. The suit argues that algorithms, lax moderation, and easy access to hate-filled content helped radicalize him. In March 2024, a New York judge ruled that the suit against the social media platforms could proceed, opening the door to broader accountability. In the months and years since the shooting, the East Side community has carried its grief with grace and resilience. Vigils, marches, and community gatherings have honored the victims and demanded justice. The Jefferson Avenue Top store reopened on July 15, 2022, with a permanent memorial inside to remember those lost. But many say that the healing has only just begun. Residents have called for deeper investment in their neighborhood, not just in grocery stores, but in healthcare, education, housing, and economic opportunity. There's a growing consensus that fighting hate also means addressing inequality. In Congress and beyond, lawmakers and advocates have renewed debates over how to hold tech companies accountable for the spread of extremist content. While justice has begun to take shape in courtrooms, many in Buffalo still ask how the attack was allowed to happen in the first place and what must change to ensure that it never happens again. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found today's story compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. It'll help us grow. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!